In this video, I'll show you how quickly and easily you can begin building Ajax-style applications using the Microsoft Atlas framework. To do this, we'll download and install the Atlas framework itself, then we'll configure Visual Web Developer for use with the Atlas controls, and finally, we'll build our first Atlas application. Our application will use the common Ajax-style programming pattern of partial page updates. The advantage to this is that we can update areas of our web user interface without requiring full round trips back to the server. To get started, you can point your browser at atlas.asp.net and click on the download link at the top of the screen. Then, in the Atlas download section, click on the Atlas setup link and then on the download button. You'll note that the download is 2.2 megabytes, so it's a quick and easy download. And once the MSI file has been downloaded, double-click on the MSI file and click Run at the security warning. Then next, agree to the license terms, and you'll notice that there's a go-live license for the Atlas Community Technology Preview. So the applications that you build using Atlas today you can use in your production environments if you choose to. And then the installation wizard will walk us through the various project options. This first option asks if we want to install Atlas Visual Studio project templates. This is simply an indicator to the installer that once the framework itself has been installed, the installer should fire off a secondary installer to install the Atlas-specific Visual Studio and Visual Web Developer project templates. Next, we're asked if we want to register the ASBX file extension in IIS. We do want to do this. ASBX is the Atlas Bridging file extension. We can use Atlas Bridging to aggregate web services that are provided by different servers for use in a single Atlas application. So we're going to leave that selected. Now the installer has all the information that it needs to perform the installation. You'll note that the installation is pretty quick. As soon as the framework itself has been installed, then the secondary installer will fire and we'll have the option to install the Atlas web application templates. We'll leave both VB and C# as installed. And that's it. Atlas has now been installed and is ready for us to begin programming. We'll be doing our demos today in Microsoft Visual Web Developer. If you're not familiar with Visual Web Developer, it's the free version of Visual Studio. It's available at msdn.microsoft.com/express. So if you don't have a copy, go ahead and point your browser at msdn.microsoft.com/express. Select Visual Web Developer 2005 Express in the For Web Development box, and then you'll be able to download your free version today. So back in Visual Web Developer, we're going to say create a website, and notice that we have the template installed for the Atlas website. We can use either VB or C#. I'm going to work in VB for the purposes of this demo, and we'll change the name of our project to Atlas Hello World. So we've now created a default project using the Atlas template. Note that because we use an Atlas web template, we get an instance of the Microsoft.web.atlas DLL included in our bin directory. If we bring up the default.asbx file, our default page, we'll notice that we also had included a Atlas Script Manager object. But other than that, to begin with, we're not going to do any Atlas-specific functionality in our application. We're going to start by building out a simple application that uses standard server-side ASP.NET 2.0 controls, and then we'll modify the application to use some Atlas-specific behaviors. So first, I'm going to add a few label controls to our user interface, and I'm just going to use these label controls as timestamp delimiters so that we can determine when the various parts of our web application are updated. I'll double-click on our web page to create a page load event, where I can then populate each of the labels with the current date and time. So I'll say label1.text equal datetime.now, and I'll do that for each of the three labels that we've created. So we just use the default names, label 1, 2, and 3. And if we go back into design mode, now I can add the server-side functionality. So to do this, I'm going to add another text box I'm going to add a button, and then inside that, underneath the button, I'll add another label. I'm going to change the name of that label to be label message, because this is going to be dynamically updated by our application. I'm also going to eliminate the default text for that label. Now I'm going to double click on the button to create a button click event, and then we'll say label message dot text equals some static text, so we'll say hello, and then we'll append whatever is entered into the text box by the user. Right, so nothing that's Atlas specific about our application so far. If we run this application, we'll enable debugging so we can run it in the debugger. Now note that our application fires up, and we have these labels that are date timestamps, and the current date and time is 6:27, 12:53, and 38 seconds p.m. If we go ahead and enter some text into the box and click the button, you'll note that all of the timestamps get updated. Do it again. So each time, all of the timestamps get updated. And what this indicates to us is that every time we click the button, the submit event gets fired, and there's an entire round trip to the server. So the entire page needs to be refreshed from the server every time we click the button here, just as though we were doing a full page refresh manually. So we can close out of that. Now we can start to add some Atlas specific functionality to our application. In order to do this, we'll note that we have the standard toolbox here in Visual Web Developer. We don't, however, have Atlas specific controls yet. So we'll add them by first adding a tab, and we'll call that tab Atlas. And then I'm going to right click in the Atlas tab that we just created, select Choose Items, and then we'll navigate out to the default install directory for Microsoft Atlas, which you can find in Program Files, MicrosoftASP.NET, Atlas, the current version number, the Atlas subdirectory, and then select the Microsoft.web.atlas DLL. When I click OK, you'll notice that the Atlas tool tab that we created now gets populated with all of the Atlas controls. We're going to take the Update panel, and we're going to drop an Update panel into our form. And this just tells us that we already have an instance of the Atlas DLL. We have that because we created a project using the Atlas template. So we're just going to go ahead and overwrite the one that we had by default. Now I'm going to use this Update panel, and I'm going to drag each of the controls that I want to be dynamically updated as part of this partial page update. So we'll add our text box, our button, and our two labels. And we'll just clean up our formatting a little bit. So now we have an update panel where we've inserted our dynamically updated controls. There's one more thing that we need to do, however. We switch over to Source View for our default page here, and into the Script Manager object, we want to add an attribute. So we want to set Enable Partial Rendering equal to True. So it's off by default. We're going to set Enable Partial Rendering equal to True. And now, if we rebuild and rerun our application in the debugger, we go in and add some text. Notice that we're at 57 and 16 seconds. Notice that as I update as I click the button to update just this area of the application that we've specified as being updated through the update panel, do it again. Notice that the top and the bottom labels don't get updated timestamps. So we're not updating the entire page, we're only updating the area of page that we specified in our update panel. So notice that the timestamp that we placed inside the update panel gets updated, but the ones that are outside the update panel don't get updated. So this is very typical partial page update pattern for AJAX style applications. And there you have it. It's that easy to get started building AJAX style applications with Microsoft Atlas.